5 games matching ranked opponents, 3 bitter rivalries, virtual elimination games for the college football playoff, a trap game or 2, and an old brass spittoon for good measure. This is the College GameDay Podcast. Pete hocking a loogie right into the old brass spittoon, as it were. Glad to have you with us. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel here, another edition of the College GameDay Podcast. Pete, there are a lot of different places we could start. My inclination is to start with USC Notre Dame because of history, but the great Ivan Maisel is going to be with us momentarily to talk about a new book that he's written on Frank Leahy, and I'm sure he will have some insight to this year's edition. So let's start instead with where we're going to be. It's not a traditional rivalry. It's not a blood feud or a grudge match, except for what happened last year between the Hedges in Athens, Ole Miss and Georgia. Now,
it's
Georgia
a text feud, Rece. It's just it's a gift feud. Between Lane and Kirby.
Lane and Kirby. Did you see the little jab that Lane took at Kirby?
I wouldn't call it a little jab. I mean,
okay, yeah, it was for people who don't know, and for people who didn't see it. There was a reporter who asked Lane at a news conference about the fact that both he and Kirby are pretty demonstrative on the sidelines, and asked who he thought burned more calories over the course of a game. And Lane stopped and thought for a minute and then said he had walked by and seen Kirby at his news conference, and it did not appear that his cardio activity had been particularly high, given the results. You know, I thought, you know what? You get a guy who, has, to his credit, gotten himself in much better shape. But you put a guy in hot yoga a few times a week, and he thinks he knows everything. Thinks he can say what you put him in downward dog inside a 110-degree thing, or pigeon in a 112-degree room, and all of a sudden he thinks he can just fire shots at a 2-time national champion. Is that how we're going to play this week, Pete?
So Lane thought he knew everything long before he started doing yoga. Let's be clear about that, okay? Yeah, that's fair. I remember back when he was at Tennessee taking shots at Urban Meyer, and Lane is
rocky top all night.
Yeah. Ready, fire, aim has always been the Lane public-facing way. I will defend hot yoga.
What do you think? You know everything when you get into?
I sure don't. I know I'm not in good shape. That's like a very good reminder of what poor physical shape I'm in when I go do hot yoga, which is not nearly as much as I used to now with 2 kids under 3.5, basically. But it is good for the soul. It does help you sweat out. Like it's sort of it's the ultimate lazy man workout. Now, it's not lazy. It's really hard, but you don't have to move very far, and you're kind of stuck doing it. You can't really tap out like in the middle. So, and I give Lane credit. He is really he has become a devoted yogi, and some zen has come from him with it, just a little.
Well, I think too, the other thing with that is, Kirby spent a lot of his time. Does Kirby get to call timeout during hot yoga or not, if he were to go there?
I wish I could. Yeah, they just clap. Yeah, there's not a lot of clapping, and timeouts are discouraged. I'll stop and drink some water. But I still can't believe that happened. That's like one of the more. It's just like, especially it's like, what? And then they show the replay, and he's like,
have I told you my theory on this?
I don't think so.
Okay, now. Multiple things are true about this. Number one, let's start at the beginning. Auburn was clapping.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And it's against the rules.
Yes,
and so Kirby was right about that. My sense of it is that Kirby sort of flipped out for a second, lost contact with the mothership, and was like, "Wait, they can't clap," and like inadvertently, he didn't really want a timeout. There was no reason for him to want a timeout there. So he's running up, and I think he's like, timeout, they can't clap, and then realize, no, they're clapping. But he should have been charged with a timeout.
I agree with that. Yeah,
there's no question about that. Yeah. I don't doubt that he didn't really want one, that he was just mad because they were clapping. But you got to be charged with one. You called it.
Yeah.
And for them not to do it is yet another egregious error. Look, you can make errors all day long in officiating. We make them on
It's
TV.
hard. Officiating is hard. We're not antagonists of the officials. They are.
Every job's hard, though.
Yeah.
Every job's hard. So, but if you're going to miss them, we all make mistakes. We make mistakes on this podcast, make mistakes on the show. If you're listening to us and you're in accounting, You probably make some mistakes. If you're an insurance adjuster, you probably make mistakes. Everybody does. Nobody's saying the officials have to be perfect. I can deal with, may critique you, say that should have been a hold, that should have been pass interference, those types of things. I can live with that. Misapplication of the rules, that's the primary reason you're there. If not, we'll just call our own fouls. Yeah. Like a pickup game of the line. You are there to make sure the rules are not misapplied.
Like the Oklahoma-Auburn game. Like the egregious one was the
Missouri-Kansas game.
Yes,
with the free kick.
Yes.
And this situation in the Auburn-Georgia game. So anyway.
Yeah, it's been a tough season for the Zebras in Birmingham. It's been a tough season. So.
It has. It has. But more important is to the game. And rarely does Georgia have the opportunity to come back after a loss. And, everybody wants redemption, revenge, payback, whatever you want to call it after a loss. That's not uncommon. What I do think is a little bit different about this one, and they're different players and everything. I understand that. But Georgia got pushed around last year in the loss to Ole Miss. They got manhandled. That doesn't happen. They lose games. Everybody stumbles and steps on a rake here and there, but they kind of got bullied. And a lot of the guys who did the bullying for Ole Miss are no longer with the Rebels, but that happened. And so I think you're going to see a highly charged Georgia team come in against Ole Miss Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think the most impressive part about what Ole Miss has done this year is that nobody's going to tell you they have more talent overall and holistically, especially on defense, than last season. They don't have near the number of NFL prospects, and 1 to 11 that they roll out there, they are not as good. But that just because you have the most talent doesn't mean you play the best. And I feel like this Ole Miss team has found an identity. They've made the quarterback shift, and they've really locked in. And
is that set for sure?
Has
Austin Simmons been Wally pipped?
It is not. As of taping this Wednesday morning, it is not like declared from the mountaintops, but it's kind of understood. That's my impression of it.
I understand the whole idea that you can't lose your job because of injury. That's a noble effort. But Austin Simmons is a high-level prospect. Nothing has changed about that. He is and is going to be an outstanding player. But what Trinidad Chambliss has done, you cannot. You'll risk losing your team. Not just laying anybody else. You have someone that is playing at that level, at that position, and you say, well, we're going to make a change. You can't do it. He's been terrific. The story that I think it was Schleybaugh that wrote, and I want to give credit where credit's due. If that's wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. I think Schleybaugh wrote the story this week on his background. Ferris State's a powerhouse in Division II. Very good program. But even they didn't really know what they had at the beginning. And this guy's been phenomenal, and he'll be tested again on Saturday.
Didn't he split snaps there?
Yeah, initially.
Yeah.
What happened, according to the story, they were splitting snaps. The coach there likes to do that, apparently, likes to play multiple quarterbacks. And he played poorly in the first game, threw a couple picks. Then the other guy, and I apologize to him, I don't recall his name off the top of my head, but he came in and he got injured. Then like in a subsequent game. And then when Chambliss went back in full time, he went off. So it's a great story. He wasn't really jumping to leave, but in this day and age of it being a de facto minor league system, several people had found him, but none at the level of Ole Miss really until Charlie Weiss and Joe Judge and some of the, I think Charlie Weiss Jr. found him first, it seemed, and sort of alerted the rest of the Ole Miss staff. And man, has that ever paid off for them?
Yeah. So it's going to be Chambliss again on Saturday. I don't think there's any ambiguity over that. And it's a fascinating situation. and it's one of those things that's understood but not not declared. And and at this point, Rece, you can't go back. The guy's won too many big games, and he has earned it. Now the circumstances might not be the most fair, but he has certainly earned it. You feel for Austin Simmons, right? Because he waited his turn. He did what most modern quarterbacks don't do: go somewhere, sit, develop, learn.
But he's also really, really young when he was sitting and developing.
He
classified 2 classes.
Correct,
back,
but he was Texas redshirted to get there. So I think he's just like age appropriate. That's my understanding. I think he's 19 or 20. He's not like 16 or anything. You know what I mean? He didn't. But, I think he showed up at 16. He might be 19 now.
By the way, highly recommend as Pete phrased it, the Texas red shirt method. If you are a family and you have an aspiring young athlete, that is a wise move.
Did you do the Connecticut red shirt, Rece?
We did not. Oh. My son actually graduated high school and started college at 17.
Oh wow.
So Ryan Williams-esque. But then because of the reason I say that is because then he had injuries and a number of things along the way. So by the end, he was like an elder statesman in his last year at Duke, but that was because of lots of misfortune along the way. But you see the differences in the guys who, and really in any sport, you see it in basketball a lot, and I think you would certainly see it in the physical development of football. Yeah. There is a difference in being a 19-year-old freshman and being a 17-year-old freshman.
What you see now,
in most cases, there are certainly exceptions, but in most cases,
what you see a lot now, Rece, is the Texas red shirt is applied, and then when the prospect has hit a certain threshold, they reclassify back to their normal class. Does that make sense? Like the top guys. So it's like it
gives you some room if you need it, and then when you don't need it, then you reclassify and fix it. Well, you know what should be reclassified is the starts that Georgia has gotten off to. They faced double-digit deficits in 7 of their last 10 games against Power 4 opponents.
That's wild. That's a great stat. Dame. Is that Marissa's fine work?
I found it yesterday. Marissa usually gets it to me, but in this, I did not dig it all up and go through it. I read it and went back and looked at it then. They trailed at halftime in 8 of those games. And we know what's happened this year. Down 21-7 at Tennessee, 14-0 and 21-7 against Alabama, and 10-0, and in my judgment, should have been 17-0 or 16-0 to Auburn in last Saturday night. But to their credit, they roared back, in most of those games, and either won the game or made it a game. So, but I would say it would behoove them not to get off to such a slow start on Saturday. How do you see this game going? This is really because of LSU's struggles and turmoil. This is really the first temperature taking for Ole Miss, I think, too. Bit.
Well, it's a funny year in college football, right? Because LSU, if you look at the rankings, is a top 10 team, right? And God bless them, they've earned that. They haven't felt like a top 10 team, right?
Agreed.
The offense has sputtered a little bit. They've been good when they needed to and figured it out, which look, you have to do in the SEC. There's no unabated Saban-esque death marches through the SEC anymore. Everything is fraught. And I really think the talent of this Georgia team is indicative of this new era. Georgia's very good and they have very good players, but they are not a dominant Death Star like they were when they were back-to-back and almost three-peat under Kirby a couple of years ago. And that's because probably the best defensive end this year in the SEC is Georgia transfer Damon Wilson, who's at Missouri. You could argue others, but he has probably been the most dominant. NFL scouts really like him as a high end guy.
What does he have? He has like 5.5 sacks,
yes,
I think, or something like that.
Yeah, he's been excellent. And he looks it too. You saw that against Bama. He's twitchy off the edge. And look, he's probably making 7 figures, and he didn't want to wait his turn. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Like it's the new ecosystem we're in. But you point out, it's like, why doesn't Georgia have a couple of like top 15 blue blood stud players like they've had in the past, right? And that's the reason that guys there's very good players there. The guys aren't earning the amount of snaps, or they don't quite see the path to all the snaps. So they go somewhere where they're really coveted. They'll get highly paid and they go. And so It's a long-winded way to say I think this will be a close game. Like I don't like Georgia hasn't blown anybody out, right? Or
Right.
Kentucky. So like the notion of Georgia running this thing 31-3 doesn't seem realistic. Chambliss is running quarterback. He's going to find a way to move the ball, and so yeah, I think we see a classic SEC, maybe unlane like this is going to be more Kirby style than Lane style. Gunner running and slinging and moving, and boy, is he a fun player to watch, Rece, huh? Like I've really come to appreciate him in this first full season, seeing him, and yeah, it's going to come down to like third down dive for the chain type plays. I think it's going to be one of those games where like third downs early in the third quarter feel like the last drive of the game. You know what I mean? Like yards are going to be precious, points are going to be precious. I'm sure Lane will have some fun fourth down decisions to make in that 10-day. Are we going to have any weather, or do we have a nice day? I haven't looked.
I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the weather yet. I'm hoping a nice day. I think it's supposed to be later on in the week, but I haven't looked for Saturday yet. I was thinking when you were talking about the Georgia transfers, Georgia really, that's been one of the issues with the defense. They don't really have guys who at this stage in their career have gotten home on the pass rush.
Yeah.
Because not only Wilson, but Darius Smith is another guy at Missouri who was at Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's almost like their get home guys are playing for drink.
Yeah.
And it'll be getting after the Auburn quarterback. You mentioned
and Zion Young is from Georgia. Sorry to cut you off. He went to Michigan State, and he's their other. They have three. Really have four, but they have three high end people, all with ties to the state of Georgia, and they've just all shuffled around in the in the world we're in.
We'll pick Georgia and Ole Miss a little bit later on in the podcast, but since you brought up LSU's offensive struggle, another thing that I dug up yesterday, went back and looked through this. Do you realize that LSU's offense hasn't scored more than 23 points against an FBS opponent this year?
Wow.
Now, they faced some good scoring defenses. Even Louisiana Tech, against whom they scored 23, is like top 25.
They're having a really nice year there. They're having a really nice year
scoring defense. So it's not as if, they've performed poorly against, bad defenses or anything like that. They faced legitimate defenses. But with those receivers and Nussmeier, that's the thing, Pete. People make fun of us, especially our loyal listener and game day producer, Jim Galliero. When we were in the offseason, we didn't do it as much this year, I think mostly because of all the transfers. But you and I both share this in that we believe that continuity and experience on the offensive line is a really big stinking deal. And we mentioned it with LSU, but I don't know that we completely gave it as much impact as it's had. Losing 4 offensive line starters, a first-round pick at left tackle, guys who'd played together a lot for a long time. Doesn't mean LSU doesn't have good offensive linemen. They do.
Yeah.
I'll even give you another offensive line example from a game coming up this week. Notre Dame just lost. Ashton Craig at center. He's gone for the season. Unfortunately for him, he suffered a knee injury, same knee he hurt last year. Last year, when he got hurt, Marcus Freeman turned to Pat Coogan, and Pat started the rest of the way, all the way through the national championship game. Can't do that this year because he's now starting for Indiana and has started every game there. So that really, I think, underscores the difficulty of building experience depth anywhere. You just mentioned it about Georgia and the pass rushers, but also I think particularly along the lines of scrimmage and certainly the obvious position at quarterback. So
they had an O-lineman go to Nebraska too, and he's starting there. Notre Dame did last year. So Notre Dame had a bunch of offensive line issues, much like Ohio State did last year too, right? And they had some depth guys flee too. And it's just the way of the world. There are only so many humans that size and that age who can play college football, and they are going to be a commodity, and they should go play.
And they're still waiting. We've wandered here. It's been kind of fun, just kind of talking here. But Charles Jagusaw, who's an outstanding offensive lineman for Notre Dame, was on a team trip in the offseason, had an ATV accident, suffered a broken arm, and because of the nature of the break, he just recently, Marcus Freeman said, had another procedure on it, and they're waiting to get him back, and they expect to at some point this season. When I was in South Bend over the course of the summer, I was asking It was shortly after the accident had happened. And I asked Marcus how long it would be. And he said, he said, we have a time frame. He said, but because of the nature of the break, he said, I don't want to put it out there that it's like this number of weeks for the healing. He said, because there are potential things that could cause setbacks with it because of the nature of the injury that he had. So they're still waiting on his return. So, that could be a factor on Saturday. There, I think we are going to have weather. Notre Dame and USC, and there
underneath the blue-gray sky,
outlined.
Sorry,
blue-gray October sky, but it'll be pitch black there by then.
Perfect segue for Ivan to come in, isn't it?
It is. And if anyone knows,
I think he wrote that lead.
He probably he might have. If anyone knows the history of college football, the college football's foremost historian, one of the most impactful people in the game, both as a writer, as his work with the National Football Foundation, work with the College Football Playoff Committee, I believe, too. The great Ivan Maisel is joining us now. Ivan has written a book about Frank Leahy called An American Coach. He was gracious enough to send me an advanced copy, and Pete knows that I nerd out on all this stuff. I loved reading this story. I feel like I'm, cast back into the days when Rockney is saying to Leahy, when Leahy makes the travel squad, Ivan, have you ever eaten a steak in a Pullman car, Frankie? These stories that you pulled together from another year, I marvel at what guys like you, what guys like Pete, when you dive into a book, coming up with these details. So, Ivan, when you're researching a book like that, in some cases coming up with stories that are a century old, how do you find those details, those conversations recounted that really give a book some soul and some character and sort of transport you to feeling like you're there? How do you find those conversations?
Thank you, Rece, I love your enthusiasm. You're hamstrung in part by everybody's gone. Nobody's alive anymore. I found one manager from his last team who was still alive, but who was great. But then you're at the mercy of the journalism, really. And I found a lot of books I didn't know existed. Thank God for newspapers.com. Not every newspaper is on it, but the South Bend Tribune is on it, and so many of the big city papers that covered him, and all the magazines, and then it's up to you as a journalist who's been around for a little bit to sort of judge how plausible, or what's the context of where this was, and can you trust it, and that was basically it. But I did a lot of digging and found a lot of really fun stuff, and even to the point that some of his assistant coaches' families and his family sent me memoirs that they had written, or their parents had written, which had some incredible stuff.
And it helped, Ivan, that you were on the train car for most of those road trips, right, early in your career. So,
me and Red Smith split a.
You split cigars on the.
How about that? Ivan, I pump you up, and he comes right in, snarky person from Boston. I refuse to use the term that he calls himself, a person from Massachusetts who sometimes is snarky. Say it,
okay.
Pete.
We're Maisels. We're Maisels. Okay. We're not. It's not an insult, Rece. It's not an insult. It's an accurate description.
I've driven right alongside them.
Yes.
Driven right alongside.
They've saluted you. Times. Yes. Well, I am fascinated by the research aspect of this, so forgive my joke, Ivan. It's good to have you here. So Notre Dame is a place that loves its lore, right? It's a place, and that's a compliment. Like Notre Dame as an institution, as a program, really dials into what it was. And did you just walk into like the library there, and was there like a kind 78-year-old person who was like, hey, come to the microfiche where the Leahy archives are located? Like there had to be, anytime you do a project like this, there had to be a few aha people, like the manager who's still alive is great. Could you just walk us through a little bit of some of those aha moments in the research where you're like, oh, now I'm getting that like next cut of information?
So Greg Bond is the archivist, the sports archivist at the library. Notre Dame is the probably only school I'm aware of. I heard Michigan's got a pretty good cache of historical stuff, but Notre Dame saved a lot of stuff, and
awesome.
It's remarkable what they had. The story I love the most is I am a Red Smith, huge Red Smith fan. Red Smith went to Notre Dame and, of course, was the great columnist in New York for the second half of the 20th century, really from the 40s to the 80s.
Wow.
And he went to Notre Dame, so I thought surely he wrote about Frank Leahy. But he wrote for the New York Herald Tribune, which died in the 60s. So I'm like, how am I going to find the New York Herald Tribune? I couldn't find it. Was not on newspapers.com. I was ready to just go into Bryant Park, the main library on Fifth Ave at Bryant Park, and just go through microfilm, and Red Smith's papers are at the Notre Dame library. So I said to Greg, do you have his columns? He said, well, his papers are just his scrapbooks. And I thought, oh God. And he said, and they're just chronological columns. And I went, oh God, I'm just going to have to go through them. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, he went to Notre Dame. Surely he wrote about Frank Leahy. And it's the Herald Tribune. It's been dead 60 years. He said, oh, we have the Herald Tribune digitized. It's like the happiest moment of my journalistic career. He walks over to the computer, types in Red Smith, Frank Leahy, and 70 columns popped up. And, I'm enough of a troglodyte that I had him print them out, but I skipped out of the library. I was so excited.
There in this era, I hear a lot now, Ivan, of people saying, well, that happened decades ago. That's in the past. Things have changed. Why are stories like this in books like this about Frank Leahy, about any giant from the past, why are they important?
Well, history's fun, to me. And, he was one of the great coaches in a sport we all love. It's really as simple as that. And to me, Rockne is everywhere to this day, nearly 100 years after he died tragically. And Leahy was, as the name of my first chapter, he was a name in a record book. And I kind of like to think I know a lot about the history of the game. I didn't know a lot about him. I thought, well, he's still second in winning percentage ever. Guys who coach 10 years or more, that's the NCAA standard. Surely somebody wrote a book about him, and there really hadn't been a book. Well, Urban is not. Urban is a couple of games behind him.
Okay. It's the Division III guy from where Sirianni and Jason Candle went, right? Larry Karras.
Larry Karras at Mount Union?
Yeah.
Mount Union? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Well, probably, but okay. FBS.
Okay. So who is it?
If we're going to go FBS. Yeah.
If I cut you off this long, I want to know.
Number one?
Yeah. Who's number one?
Rockne is number one.
Rockne's number one. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Rockne's number one, and Leahy played for Rockne, and we all know Rockne,
Sure.
And, is to this day. And so I just thought, well, surely a book's been written about him. And he had a posthumous autobiography that came out in 1974, the year after he died. And that was really it. So I thought, this guy is just, he's out there, and go find him. And, is that important? I'd like to think it's important. And Notre Dame is college football in so many ways. Mm-hmm. So I went after it.
What are 2 or 3 of your favorite details, like that you think illuminate an era and a time and encapsulate Leahy the best?
Well, the practice field at Notre Dame when he got there was in the field house. The field house had a basketball court on one half where the team played its game. The other half was just dirt. And they would bring a farmer in to plow up the dirt and get the rocks out. And so he would bring his horses in to plow the field. And horses are horses. So there was manure on the field. And they would just plow the manure into the field. So the trainer kept a supply of tetanus shots for when one of the players' skin broke. I thought that was, that's 1940. It's not terribly long ago, but they had to keep a supply of tetanus shots at the ready.
I thought the other thing in reading through there, Ivan, was sort of his fixation, his love for Notre Dame, and his star-crossed playing career. He turned out to be one of Rockne's favorites as a player because of his attitude. But it seemed like every time he got a chance to get on the field for the Irish, something awful befell him in many cases, it seemed.
So he came from Winter, South Dakota, Rece, and this is how recruiting worked back then. I'm getting to your point. His high school coach played for Rockne, and his coach sent Rockne a letter, said, "I got 2 players here," and Rockne sent him a letter back and said, "Okay, send them along. I'll give them a scholarship." Boom, that was recruiting. And after they graduated, Leahy's teammate said to him, "We're not good enough to play. I'm not going. We're not good enough to play there." And that ended their friendship. Leahy, and not only did it end their friendship, Leahy's fuel for the next 4 years and probably throughout his coaching career was he was going to prove to his buddy Clayton he was good enough for Notre Dame. And he was good enough to win a job, but he really wasn't good enough to play because he was too small to remain healthy. And that was his problem. He kept getting hurt, and he blew his knee out 3 days before his first game of his senior year. And, but Rockne recognized his mind and saw that he could be a really good coach, and just encouraged him that last year, walk around the practice. Don't just stick with your linemen. See what everybody's doing. And did I answer your question?
You did. I mean, I recall the one instance where I think it was like maybe his second game starting, he dislocated his elbow or broke it or something, and he came back and did it again. It was like I think that's what fascinated me about the book and why I like these, Ivan, is because when you grow up, as all of us did, loving this sport, and you understand that the players today, I believe they love the sport too. They have, I hear people say things where they're getting paid, they don't love it the same way. I think they do, but certainly their circumstances are different. And you hear, when you read these stories of guys where this was their way out and this was their way to succeed, and they had a passion for an institution that was uncommon, even that it was uncommon even for the time. It's really fascinating work, man. I tell you, I really encourage people to go get it. American Coach. Awesome. It's an awesome book. I wish you tons of success with it. Now, you have another job too on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee here. So let's dive into that a little bit. I'm understanding that there are new
Happy to
metrics.
not answer your questions.
Right.
He's used to that. He gets that a lot.
I get that a lot on Tuesday nights. There are going to be new metrics here. I've maintained that I applaud that. You guys the committee has had access to just about any kind of metric they want. What's been the directive in terms of evaluation? Because the reason we have a committee is because so you can employ some subjective judgment. But what is the directive that will be impacted by these enhanced metrics? I think is the term they're using.
Enhanced, yes. Well, anything past multiplication is enhanced for me. Basically what they have said to us, Rece, and keep in mind, I've been to 2 meetings, and we have another this Sunday and Monday. We have what is pretty much going to be a table setting meeting for the month of November. So I'm going down to Dallas Sunday. But what they've said to us about the data is it's all for your use as you wish, and it's just a smorgasbord, and they have talked about how some guys like some numbers, some guys like the other, and if there's something that's not here, please tell us and we'll get it for you. Tom Osborne loved comparative field position. He wanted to know what was your average starting field position and what was your opponent's average starting field position. And that was what he really focused on. And so that's now part of our package, and everybody calls it the Osborne stat. So
that's great.
Yeah. I mean, so and they have described what this new, what the enhanced metric will be for us. Some of the data we will get because there just aren't enough games for it to be meaningful, and they kind of figure, and it's really the reason my understanding historically is the committee doesn't meet until November, in part because the data needs about 8 games to have some semblance of accuracy. So, but that new, schedule strength stat I'm curious about. I'll certainly look at it. I've been trying to sort of recreate it on my own with, pen and paper, and that takes me way too long to do. So I'm just, waiting for, the data to catch up.
Ivan, you've covered every iteration of the postseason in college football for the last 40 or so years, I'd guess. And, I can think back to early in my career going to the BCS meetings in Phoenix and waiting outside a hotel room, and something happened and then there was a reaction and the formula changed. And that has sort of been the spin cycle that we're in. So let me ask you this, as someone who has seen every iteration, every reaction, every overreaction, how do you feel about where we are right now with this? And, it looks like we're going to be settling in to a 12 team for a little bit of a run here, which is going to be rare, right? Everything's changed so much. Just how do you feel about where we are in terms of field selection now that you've sat in the meetings and digested everything from the macro?
Well, all I'll tell you, Pete, is, as you say, I am old enough to remember what a disaster the BCS formula was. And for the people who complain about the subjective nature of a committee, I always marvel, and I have marveled at this from the time that they, from the time they first complained. It's that every other sport uses a committee, and nobody really complains about that. Somebody may complain about the number 69 team, not getting into or whatever it'll be now, number 75 or 83, however many teams they're going to jam into March Madness. But
hey, they were 7-11 in their league play. Okay, they had a good case. They went 7-11 in league play, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Forgive me. People make decisions, and they have made pretty good ones. I mean, the people complain about the playoff fields, but you ask them specifically what decision did they not like, and other than the ones in Tallahassee, there's not a whole lot of you don't get a whole lot of solid answers there. So I think committees work. I've always thought committees work. I'm now part of the committee, and so now I question whether it worked because I'm part of it. But we'll give it a try.
It's a really, I think, from a historical standpoint, for years and years and years, for decades, the lower the number in the lost column, the better you were. That's how teams basically were largely ranked in the AP poll forever. Now people want to challenge that. I mean, we've said on this podcast a lot of times, my only objection to a 12-team playoff is that I think even last year we wound up finding teams who were less objectionable than the other candidates. It's not like we had all these. Now, there might be years where we have extra deserving candidates, but you also wind up a lot of times, as we did last year, with, SMU, maybe less than a stellar schedule, even though Indiana was very good. Indiana certainly less challenging in its schedule a year ago, but they were less objectionable than the SEC teams, for instance, and probably less objectionable than Miami. How do you go about that philosophically in determining when you get to the end of the line? How do you envision yourself evaluating teams who, when you get down to 12, 13, 14, 15, those teams are going to have warts? How do you envision yourself differentiating among those teams who have reasons to object to them being in a postseason field?
Well, look, the one thing, the first two meetings, the two meetings I've been to, guys, were basically team building meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And
trust falls.
What I have learned. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we were all at the Air Force Academy in August, and we didn't have trust. I guess we did have trust falls because Rich Clark took us all on a 50-foot platform where they begin to train the paratroopers, and we all jumped off of it, with harnesses and cables.
Really?
And thankfully nobody filmed me doing it, but I do have film of my wife doing it. So that
oh wow,
that was
okay.
That was pretty cool. And
yeah,
we walked
really
cool. We walked on cables 50 feet above ground, from here to here, and and made a square. And again, just learning to trust the process and trust the guy you were with. I was with Chris Alt, and he can coach me anytime. He coached me through that. Mm-hmm. But the one, the one agenda that was drilled into us then, and I think will be drilled into us at every juncture, is get it right. And you're here because you deserve to be here. I went through a process. I'm in the room, and I'm going to trust my gut, and that's why I'm there. And and again, the process seems to have worked. I spent the first 2 weeks of the season trying to watch every game they sent me, because they gave me an iPad, which was pretty cool. And then on Sunday mornings, they upload the iPad with video from about anywhere from 10 to 15, 18 games. And I was trying to, and they stripped the video of commercials and halftime and a lot of between play chatter and so it's about an hour and change of video. So you can knock out a game pretty quickly. And I was trying to watch them all, and I was exhausted, and I just finally said, you know what, I did it the way I did it for a long time. I'm going to do it the way I do it. And I still watch more football than I ever have, but I'm just going to look at them and point, and that's going to have to work.
Ivan, I'm curious. We chatted a little bit on the phone yesterday, and obviously we talked about James Franklin, because he is the story of the week in college football. Is there, in your experience covering it, a more surprising firing than James Franklin 6 games into the season this year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's. You're sitting in a pot of water and somebody starts to, and then they turn it, and then they turn the heat on. I mean, a few years ago, the first time they fired somebody at midseason, we all went, oh my God, how can they do that? And then the first time they fired somebody 3 weeks into the season, oh my God, can you do that? The pressures that are on schools and ADs to perform, and therefore on coaches, are are just crazy now. And, you'd like to think you'd never be surprised, but of course you're surprised. I mean, who could have seen that coming?
One of the quickest falls I've seen. Ivan, we'll let you go on this one. You've written this great book on Frank Leahy. Part of the Notre Dame lore is the rivalry against USC and beyond next year. There is some question about whether that will continue. I have confidence that it will. It should. I'll be pounding on tables if it does not. Why? What do you think? Why is it important for Rece and Notre Dame to continue an uninterrupted series and rivalry?
Well, so much of, I think, the lure of college football is steeped in emotion and tradition and the importance we place on all of that. The way we feel about our schools. And I feel like I've spent the last 20 years bemoaning lost rivalries, and probably you could go back farther than that. The Georgia Tech and Tulane left the SEC 60 years ago. And everybody went, oh, my God, how can they do that? The sport seems to keep churning along fine regardless. That said, if you list the top 5 rivalries in the sport, I think, USC and Notre Dame are going to be in there. And to see that, even discuss that, possibly not continuing, I think is at least a misdemeanor and probably a felony. So I certainly hope they keep it, but let's go through the litany of rivalries we don't have anymore. And it would certainly be a shame, though.
No doubt about it. I wish you luck with the book, my friend. Thanks for taking time with us. Just fascinating reading it. I appreciate you sharing it with me, and good luck on that committee too. And if the chair doesn't answer the questions appropriately on Tuesday nights, I'm going to start lobbying for you to step in.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, we all want that. Yeah. Thank you.
That Stanford bias is going to shine through.
I have to recuse myself from Stanford and Notre Dame this year, Notre Dame, because of the book.
That's fine.
My sincere hope is that over 3 years, the Stanford recusal will come into play. A boy can dream.
If we could get Captain Andrew Luck to send out a tweet about Ivan recusing himself during the discussion on the front battle lines or something, that's an idea.
Brave alumni going to the Southwest Plains.
The squirrels and the pigs will comfort Ivan while he's outside, locked outside the room.
There's always a squirrel.
Ivan, you are familiar with that of which we speak, I assume, right?
Oh yeah, no. It's
okay,
brilliant.
all right.
Yes. I'd love to know who it is, but I don't really want to know who it is, who's doing it.
Maybe it's Faux Pelini, just sort of reinventing himself. So.
Faux Pelini was elite.
Yeah, he was
Faux Pelini was good.
While we're on the subject of college football lore that has to be preserved, Faux Pelini had a huge role in the most important and the best trophy, in the most hallowed trophy, even beyond the Heisman Trophy in all of college sports. $5 bits of broken chair trophy between Nebraska and Minnesota. That was
Rece really loves chintzy Big Ten trophies. Like look at the glee in his face. Like you bring up the brass spittoon, Rece lights up, and he knows all the weird ones like Minnesota and whoever. He knows them all. Yeah. A lot of wrap-up shows, I guess.
A lot of them over the years. A lot of them. Ivan, thanks, my friend.
That's
we
great.
Appreciate having you on. Thanks for joining us. The great Ivan Maisel, man, what a great dude. And look, I know I said it a few times. You'll enjoy the book. Trust me. I mean, it's a long read. It's intricate and it's fascinating. And it's one of the great characters, one of the winningest coaches in the history of the sport, a guy who's probably, for whatever reason, has historically been a little bit underappreciated, probably because with some other guys in there, but in terms of icons, was sandwiched between Rockne and Parsegian. And sometimes maybe doesn't quite get his due, but one of the great coaches in the history of Notre Dame football and of college football. And Ivan's written a tremendous book on him. Encourage you to check that out when you get an opportunity. It makes a great gift for that Notre Dame fan in your life as we approach the holidays. Pete, we've taken it a lot of different directions today for sure, but let's go ahead as we wrap up the pod and do really what people want so they can yell at us when they say, ha, you were wrong, and make some picks. You and I last week were both decidedly mediocre in our picks, both of us going 500 at 3-3. I worry about groupthink with us. I think we had a difference here and there, though I was not on the pod on Wednesday, but I think we had a difference.
We did have some differences. I definitely took Indiana. I remember that. I'm staying with Sig, but I lost a bunch too. Like nobody's patting themselves on the back for accurate predictions in 2025. No, so
right. No, man.
Yeah, and I took Indiana in part because I have faith in them, picked to make the playoff, and then in part because we were starting to get a little group thinky. So I did that.
I've forgotten which game it was a couple of weeks ago. We were going through this, and you and I don't know who the other guy's going to pick. And I remember thinking I was going to pick one way, and I was like, geez, we're going to have all the same picks if I don't. And it was close. I would never – I always say this like on the show. Mm-hmm. The host role, I mean, you know this. I mean, the guys tease me about this. I don't like it when a producer says to the host, tee somebody up. I've got things to do. I've got a life. You can get a trained seal or a trained squirrel from Captain Andrew Luck out there to say, what do you think of the game? I mean, a host is supposed to know his limitations. You don't argue with foot placement and hand placement on DB playing press coverage with Nick Saban. That's not
sure
the rule.
Don't.
But you can argue about who's a better team, whether he should have punted, whether Kirby had the timeout, whatever. Those types of things contribute to the discussion, right? Mm-hmm. So I never say anything and present it as if I believe it if I don't. But sometimes the host has to present the responsible opposing view and say, well, okay, I hear you. Maybe you even agree with it strongly, but sometimes you say, but what about? Like that. So maybe I would say the pick that I went against you because of that was like I was going back and forth. I landed one place. Pete went there. We need to have some differences. I'll take the other side. That's the only case. Otherwise, whatever I say on TV or on this podcast, you can believe that I believe it. And in the words of the great George Costanza, it's not a lie if you believe it. So with that, here we go. Let's start with LSU and Vanderbilt. Earlier in the podcast, as we were meandering our way through several topics before we talked to Ivan, I mentioned the struggles that the LSU offense has had. Surprisingly, we attributed some reasons to that. Vanderbilt, meanwhile, comes in Diego Pavia. This is a huge, huge game for Vanderbilt because if Vanderbilt doesn't win this game at home against LSU, after losing to Alabama, it'll be 2 conference losses, and it'll be, hey, that's a nice story. Good for you, Vanderbilt. You don't stink anymore. If you win this, then you're still in the mix. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying they're mathematically eliminated with a loss, but it de facto probably so in terms of SEC and college football playoff, things like that. Big game for them, and the same is true for LSU. Mm-hmm. Now they'll face a little more heat if they lose the game, but it's massive. LSU hasn't been able to run the ball. Vanderbilt, their rush defense is pretty solid, but they've given up some big plays passing. How do you see this game?
Yeah, I am going to not trust my eyes, which have kind of been glazed over by the LSU offense, and take LSU on the road. I feel like Nussmeier, even though they didn't score a bunch in that South Carolina game, I saw Garrett Nussmeier again. He's obviously been bothered by that oblique, and he's been like a little bit shaky. He, to me, took a step forward the other night against South Carolina, and I feel like they will be able to muster enough offense and have enough explosion in order to beat Vandy.
I want to go against the grain and go against what your inherent body of work and experience tells you, that Vanderbilt's not going to win this game. You just feel like that they're going to fight. They're going to make it close. They're going to get there, and LSU is going to find a way to win. I'm going. You know what? I'm going to go with Vanderbilt.
Go for it.
I think LSU.
They're favored. It's not crazy.
Yeah,
They're favored.
yeah,
Las Vegas thinks Vanderbilt's going to win,
which is a little bit of a sucker play because I think I'm going to need to see it to believe it. But there's something about this year and the upstarts, and I just saw it last week. Even though my eyes told me Indiana was better than last year, my eyes hadn't said that I thought they would go into Oregon, and I mean I thought they could win, but dominate the game. Largely, with the exception of a couple of explosive plays, they dominated the line of scrimmage. I don't know if Vanderbilt can do that against them, and it does scare me that Vanderbilt has allowed 11 touchdown passes, and if there is a way for LSU to put up points, it is certainly through the air and not on the ground. But I'm gonna trust Pavia with this one, and I'm gonna say that that Vanderbilt wins one, and the heat really turns up there at LSU, especially with A&M and Alabama, with their next two games with an off weekend there in between. Ole Miss and Georgia. DJ, our producer, he said he laid down the law earlier, Pete. He said, don't pick the dogs. The last time everybody picked the dogs lost. I can't take it anymore. He's begging us to pick Ole Miss. And you are going to do what?
I'm not going to listen to DJ. I'm going to take the dogs between the hedges, man. I mean, I give them credit for finding themselves in the second half again. And if there's one thing about Kirby Smart and his program, there's a DNA there that has gone from year to year, even as the players change faster than they used to. So I feel like the dogs are going to be able to slow Trinidad Chambliss, force him to sit back and play quarterback in the pocket, which a lot of people haven't made him do, and they figure out a way to win.
DJ, this is for you, but not what you think. On Saturday, I'll have a little chicken. I'll have a little drink. I'll look at all the girls, and I'll give one or two a wink. I've been waiting since last Saturday to see another one beat. Friends, it's time once again to let the big dog eat. I'll take Georgia.
That is good analysis. That's why you come to this podcast.
Third
the
Saturday
only thing
Rece
likes close to goofy Big Ten trophies are fight songs, or like song appropriate
ancillary fight songs.
Ancillary fight songs. Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
A fight song adjacent.
Yes,
fight
there we
song
go.
Adjacent
exactly
music. That's what we like. On that subject, third Saturday in October, there is consternation between the two sides over Dixieland Delight. It has become something that is a staple at Alabama. Tennessee fans will tell you, well, it's a song about a Tennessee byway. And so you have all of this stuff. But the one thing that's happened, though, Tennessee has won games recently in Knoxville, the last two Knoxville meetings. The last time they won in Tuscaloosa, 2003, a game in which a Mike Shula squad repeatedly snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, including giving up a 4th and 19 in overtime for a first down, followed by a deflected pass touchdown to carry us on. It took 5 overtimes. But is this the day that Alabama, after this grind of consecutive weeks of Georgia, payback against Vanderbilt, on the road against a good Missouri team, now they have to do it again against a Tennessee squad, powerful on offense? Is this the time that Heupel gets a win in this rivalry on the road?
I don't believe so. One thing I've come to appreciate is that I think there's a talent level in the Alabama secondary that's going to be a little different than what Tennessee has seen. Joey Aguilar, I think we all remember him from the first couple drives against Georgia. I would say he's been good, but a little bit inconsistent since then. He's got 5 picks this year. I think he has not quite seen something like he's going to see on Saturday. So I'm going to go with the Tuscaloosa rendition of Dixieland Delight, and I'm going to take the Tide.
I'm going to take Alabama too. I think this is going to be a wild, high-scoring game. Alabama still hasn't solved all of its problems in rush defense. Though they did a really good job against Ahmad Hardy, they still gave up some chunk plays against Missouri. Alabama's pass defense, as you said, has been very good. And I'm going to tell you, this freshman, John Lee, he's got NFL written all over him in a couple of years. He's he's been terrific, and he will be challenged by the downfield passing attack that Tennessee has. I think Alabama gets Ryan Williams going. He didn't have anything. I think they get Jeremy Bernard going because I think Tennessee likes to challenge and play a little bit of man. The big deal is going to be, can they get pressure on Ty Simpson?
Yes.
If they can and can force some mistakes, which he has not been prone to do, it will help the Vol cause greatly. But I'm going to go with Alabama at home winning the game. USC at Notre Dame. We've talked a lot about the Irish with Ivan. Probably haven't talked enough about USC. USC's got a great story brewing in the backfield. They lost their 2 running backs last week against Michigan, and then they had an invited walk-on, King Miller, come in and just burn up Michigan. He had 159 yards after Waymon Jordan and Eli Sanders were hurt. I'll be relying on him. It might be a night where you need to rely on the running game. If it is indeed rainy, windy, stormy in South Bend, where we remember a couple years ago when Caleb Williams got turned upside down in a blustery night in South Bend. What do you like? Who do you like in this game?
I like Notre Dame in this game. I want to give Lincoln Riley and USC a lot of credit for the Michigan win. That was as big of a win as USC has had probably since the LSU game to start last season. But that was since they have entered the Big Ten, they have not been able to slug with Big Ten opponents. I think back to the Minnesota game on the road last year, the Maryland game on the road last year. I just wonder if the totality of the DNA of toughness in USC is going to be ready for Notre Dame, for South Bend, for the environment, for the stakes, with the issues they've had, obviously, at running back. So I will take the Irish in this game, but I do think it will be close, and we could see a classic.
I think it's going to be a great game, too. I'm going to take Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, I did a thing this week where, just for my own edification, broke down teams into tiers. Okay. And sort of like socioeconomic status, not ranking. And not in their NIL stuff, just like where they are as a team. I like the 1%ers. I have Miami and Ohio State. The 1 to 2%ers that might move into that realm, Indiana, sort of by itself. I have Notre Dame teetering on the millionaire, multimillionaire tier. I think Notre Dame's right there.
They're in the cul-de-sac.
They're right there. I think SC's really good. And a big thing in this game is going to be turnovers. I reached out to our great researcher, Marissa Dowling, and because I had noticed as I was going through some stuff from the last couple of years, I was like, wait a minute. They forced 5 turnovers against Caleb Williams. They had the 2 pick sixes last year. What's that look like? So she broke it down. In the Riley Freeman era, Notre Dame does have an edge in turnover margin, but where it's really been amplified is the last 2 meetings. Irish lead the turnover margin 7-2. That's bad. This is worse. They've outscored USC 42-7 in points off turnovers. They have 2 pick sixes and a fumble return for a touchdown in the last couple of games. It is 20 years since the Bush push, and SC will need something similar to pull this game out. I do think it'll be wild. I think it'll be close. If I were a man who played games of chance, I would be very hesitant to lay the number of points that they are putting out there right now. It looks like rain. Temperature's not going to be bad, but it looks like rain on Saturday night. I'm gonna go with the Irish and say they win a close, wild one. And what is, let's be honest, this is an elimination game for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame loses this game, no matter what I think about the way they played against Miami, the way they played against A&M, the way they play against SC, they have to win now. Because at some point, even if you are evaluating the things as we talked about with Ivan, how teams play as opposed to just number of losses, you've got to win some of them. And Notre Dame doesn't have a lot of opportunities left on its schedule against high-level opponents. So this is a must-win for Notre Dame, and I say they come through and get it done.
Was Bush Push really 20 years ago?
2005.
Wow, that makes me feel old. Ago. I covered that game.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was awesome. It might be, I was going to ask Ivan about it. We didn't get there, but that might be my favorite game I've ever covered. It's in the top 5 for sure. I mean, Statue of Liberty, for Boise, but that game was electric.
And didn't SC, as I recall, didn't Leinart hit Jarrett, I think Dwayne Jarrett on like a 4th and 9 for a huge play, great play to keep the game alive.
Yeah, I want to say Anthony Fasano got fumbled going, like they would have won probably. Fasano got stripped from behind, kind of going into the red zone. There are a million plays in that game. They stormed the field, unstormed the field. Like it was, there was a little bit of everything there. That was the rare contract extension off a loss that Kevin White regrets.
Well, the one thing, decided schematic advantage.
There we go.
Notre Dame had on Olive Ball at that time. Yeah. Utah and BYU, the Holy War. BYU undefeated. They escaped against Arizona. Utah, its only loss, they got clobbered at home by Texas Tech. What do you think?
I think Utah's defense figures out a way to slow Bear Bachmeier, and I think they figure out a way to win. Bear Bachmeier's been unbelievable. He's been among the, if not the best freshman quarterbacks in the country, considering he didn't even play spring, because remember he was at Stanford this spring going over there. But I feel like this game is a slog, and Utah finds a way. Dampier scoots a little bit, and the Utes win.
Remember last year, that really good BYU team ended up pulling the game out. There was a wildly controversial penalty, although I think it was an accurate call. It just didn't have a lot to do with the game. There was a 4th down sack inside the last 2 minutes on their own 1 yard line that would have won the game for Utah. Waved off because of a defensive holding penalty. Retzloff drove the Cougars down. They kicked field goal like 4 seconds to go, won the game. I expect something weird like that.
Yeah.
AD after the game at Utah.
Oh, Mark Harlan,
saying that the officials, hosed us. They stole the game. Disgusted by their professionalism.
He went to the press conference. AD
I know it. Yeah, it was unbelievable. You have all of these connections with Kalani Sitake having been on Kyle Whittingham's staff for basically a decade. He found his coordinators there. Whittingham played at BYU. Something weird's going to happen in this game. And I think the weirdest thing would be, because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop on BYU, because Bachmeier's terrific. He's young. And the things that you mentioned, I don't think it's this week. I'm going to go with the Cougars at home, finding a way to pull it out. Right. And here's one more. The guy who leads the Big 12 in sacks, John Henry Daly, used to be a starter at BYU. Now he's doing it for Utah. BYU's got a defensive lineman that started like 19 games for the Utes, and now he's got a sack for the Cougars. It's wild, man. People always say, well, this is like playing your brother. Literally, there are so many family connections here, and guys who work together and are close, and fans don't like each other, but everybody else seems to, and it'll be intense Saturday night. I'm going to say the Cougars pull a little bit of a surprise and stay unbeaten for the moment.
I've never been to that game in my career, and that's one I just want to go to. Like I've been lucky. I've been to most of them, right? Like done this a long time. I would really love to go to that game. I think it'd be awesome. So hopefully it lines up for us some year. Oh, you haven't, huh?
Yeah, I haven't. I've been obviously to games both places.
Sure.
Big games at both places, but I haven't been to a Utah BYU game either. I don't think somebody's going to say, "Hey, knucklehead," and they'll pull out me broadcasting some game when they play the weeknight. But
some Thursday,
off the top of my head, I don't think I've ever been to a game where they were playing each other. I'd love to go there at some point too. Yeah. You chose the deep cut game, so lead us off, Sunbelt man.
I will choose the deep cut game. I am excited for the Sunbelt matchup, for positioning for the Sunbelt title game between James Madison and Old Dominion, both of whom are having excellent seasons. Ricky Ronnie's Old Dominion team, as I call them up here, is 12th in the country in total offense. Colton Joseph's having a giant year for them. The offensive play caller, Kevin Decker, is a branch of the Chip Kelly, Ryan Day tree from Sean McDonald at UNH, and they've got the offense cooking there. And then we have another New England tie. There's always a masshole tie, Rece. Bob Chesney has really done a great job at James Madison. If you think about, that place was rolling for a while, and it rolled through 3 or 4 different coaches. Obviously, we know Kurt Cignetti took all the best James Madison players, because we see them all. Aiden Fisher, D'Angelo Pons, I believe Kamara came from there. The end.
Yep, he did.
Elijah Surratt, right? Those are 4 potential like All-Americans who were at James Madison. So there was obviously an exodus that followed SIG, and Bob Chesney, God bless him, has figured out a way to rebuild and retool that place to where they're sneaky in the mix for the Sun Belt Championship and that G5 spot. So that is a little more background than you might have wanted on your friendly Sun Belt matchup. But I'm going to take Old Dominion. I think they keep rolling and scoring behind Colton Joseph, and they deliver a W.
Okay. In case you've forgotten, it was a big moment of consternation last year. Matthew Sluka, who left UNLV. If you're wondering his whereabouts, he is now a member of the James Madison Dukes, although he's not playing a lot there, I don't think, right now. Old Dominion, until the loss to Marshall last week, their only loss had been against Indiana in the opener. And they didn't really, just get annihilated. They kind of hung in there. And then Marshall had a couple of turnovers last week, got doubled up in score, game got away from them. I'm gonna ride with the Dukes at home.
Okay.
Their home field advantage, great place to play. I'll go opposite you just to make it interesting, and I'll say I'll go. James Madison's provided such great game day crowds. Yes. How can I go against them?
I will say that there will be beverages consumed before kickoff if College Game Day is any indicator. That crowd was excited for College Game Day. I remember you're up on the stage. I stand off they put me on a stage amongst the masses, which is great, right? It's awesome. It's fun to be there. I looked out at James Madison last year or 2 years ago, Rece, when we were there, and I was like, these people are drunk. And it's like 8:42 in the morning. I'm like, they have either not gone to bed or started really early. They were going. So God bless them.
They a lot of good arms in the crowd too. Bagels came our way.
Oh, okay.
I got pelted by a bagel and little miniature bottles from their morning refreshment.
All right.
And they weren't angry. That was the crazy thing. They weren't throwing anything because they were angry. They were like, hey, let's see if we can throw the game day guys a bagel. Nobody was mad.
If they hit you with the nip, they definitely hit the wrong person on the desk. Now, if they had sent up a little bit of whole milk in a carton, if they were careful listeners to the Game Day Podcast.
They sent some whole milk out. Reached out there and made the grab and had some refreshments.
Put it in the brass spittoon and chugged it, right?
What do you think Nick Saban did when he won the old brass spittoon?
I don't know. Did you? I actually know.
Used it?
I would think that's probably a pretty safe assumption.
Maybe it was 4-0.
Was he really?
Right. Yeah, that'll come up on Saturday when that game comes up, I'm sure. So anyway, it was fun. Great, really great to have Ivan Maisel.
Ivan is awesome. He's the best.
He's just a tremendous guy. If you want someone with integrity, I mean, we've got a ton of guys with integrity, but if you think that's important, someone who can be a conscience for the sport in that room. For the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, they've added another one, and Ivan, and nobody's got a greater sense of integrity and conscience and dedication to detail than Ivan. I've thought that about the committee pretty much from the beginning. I mean, you go down the list. It drives me crazy as I'm going off the thing. I hear people, this happened in our college football seminar one year, and I sort of jumped on someone who's not working for us anymore because they kind of said, well, they imply these guys don't watch the games. It's such a lie. Yeah. Now, they may differ with your evaluation of it, but they watch the games. I mean, they've got the iPad. You talk to them in the aftermath when they finish, and they talk about poring over it. You might differ with the evaluation of the games, but they watch, and they work, and they want to get it right. And adding someone with Ivan's background and perspective to a list of people who played and coached the game and have covered the game and have been administrated the game. Committee's in good hands. Doesn't mean we're going to agree with their outcome, but it is in good hands. And you'll be in good hands too if you pick up a copy of Ivan's book, American Coach, about Frank Leahy. of Notre Dame. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day Podcast. Download wherever you prefer to get your podcast or subscribe. Never miss an episode, and we'll see you on College Game Day from Between the Hedges on Saturday morning.